Alright, another video on the ElectroBOOM Lewin controversy, drama, whatever. It's a legitimate subject, actually. It's kind of, fact person versus truther, in the sense that Lewin is behaving like a truther, behaving like a UFO believer, a flat earther, ironically. On its face, you're saying this should be over, instantaneously almost, because Professor Lewin's asserting that there's two voltages in the same location, and anybody I think who's even a little bit physics minded can understand. It's like saying there's two tire pressures in your tire. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no places where that kind of could work. There's no theory of electricity that makes it work. It just can't work. They can't flow through the same conductor independently of each other and without annihilating each other. Uncommon voltages. They just can't cohabitate. Just can't do it. And he's basically been teaching that to students, which is sort of, that's pretty bad. It's bad that people write crappy books and pseudoscientists, and it's bad that they get to make documentaries on TV. But it's even worse when they just bring it into a university and say, "Look, we're gonna make your students dumb." And it's MIT, which should have a higher standard, and say, "Okay, you just can't get away with a gimmick like that." And so ElectroBOOM does the right thing, points out how, maybe for wrong reason, to somehow validate Kirchhoff's law. But clearly he's making the argument there aren't two voltages in the same location. He never really says those words. That should, in my opinion, be the part that stands out as, isn't this discussion really about the fact that there can't be two voltages in the same location? So let's figure out why you're measuring two voltages in the same location, two different voltages. And clearly the reason they are, is because, yes, they're probing the experiment. They're measuring the voltages with rulers that are getting bent in the process of measuring. So we're back to relativity arguments. This is about whether the ruler is bent or whether the reality is bent. And clearly in this case, just clearly, so crystal clearly, nobody could miss it. Nobody reasonable, nobody fair-minded could miss the fact that, yes, in this case, the ruler gets bent. It goes right into the experiment, gets affected by it, melts, and doesn't measure right anymore. Clearly. And this wimp, this pussy, so understand the context. Lewin makes 3 videos. He calls him basically an imbecile, an idiot, a pseudoscientist. He doubts the credibility of his degree, calls him a flat earther stupid. Just basically says you're as dumb as a flat earther, you stupid dupe. Insults the frig out of this guy. All right, and then in the 3rd video says, "I'm sorry, you're an idiot." That's what he says. He doesn't fix anything. He shows a diagram of the idiotic experiment that he's duplicating, right? So he never even originated this thing. He didn't discover this thing. He just read about it in a paper, this stupid experiment that's got an obvious flaw in it. And so now the ElectroBOOM guy makes this video and just pussies out entirely. Just is so ambiguous. He's like he's fighting for nothing anymore. Like it all doesn't mean anything. Like who cares? Go ahead. Everybody just believe what you want. And he's arguing for what he said. He's redefending what he said. He's just saying it with even less authority, even less clearly. Yes, Professor Lewin, I'm sorry, but you're just wrong, okay? There's not two voltages in one location in the first place, and in the second place, clearly, your ruler got broken. You broke the ruler, and you broke it because you people who are supposed to be so smart, you keep talking about all these closed loops and all these lines and all these, but the field has to be perpendicular, and you can't understand something so obvious, the obvious solution. So I'll point it out, right? So that's the irony here. I'll point it out because I watch Professor Lewin's videos and I actually understand a little tiny bit of this concept, and so I can actually point out to them the obvious solution to the problem. I mean, it's so frickin' idiotic. All right, so 2 resistors. Doesn't really matter where they are. A loop in a loop. And the idea is you measure. I guess I should have drawn it the way they did with little, lines like this. Okay, so the loop's going like this little extra thing here. And you measure off these points, 2 meters, off these 2 sides. And you have a coil in here that's creating radiation. All right, so this is the whole problem, right? The radiation hits this wire, but it also hits your probe wires if they're anywhere close to these wires. So that's the whole problem here. These probe wires get hit by the same radiation that's hitting this wire. This is essentially the battery in the circuit. This is a secondary of a transformer, and this is secondary of a transformer. And you can only measure voltage. This is another thing people ought to know. You can only measure voltages when you sample them with a resistor, with some kind of resistance. You have to back the voltage up. So you have to kind of stop it. You have to create a valve that the voltage can't get through so you can measure it, what piles up that can't get through. That's the only way you can really measure a voltage. There's no other really way to do it. So you're basically just connecting a wire to something that has pressure in it. So you stick a nail or a tube inside the tire. You let the pressurized air go to a valve, and then you don't let all the air out. You just a little tiny bit, and that way you can measure how much pressure is in the tire. It's actually the same principle in an electrical circuit. You can't measure it unless you have a resistance. But the point is here is that the current is being created in the wire. The wire is essentially the battery of this circuit. This thing generates energy. The energy is caught by the wire, and the wire is essentially a battery, the cells of a battery. So the joke is, all right, so they're measuring at these 2 points. So what you learn from listening to physics lectures and all these idiotic, stupid rules and bullshit is that these lines are really important. If something doesn't cross these lines, see, the whole circuit crosses lines, right? But the trick is if you can run something parallel with the lines, that is, if I can run a wire parallel to these lines with them, I won't get any energy in this wire. This wire won't collect much. And so all they had to do was move these tapping wires, move them out a foot, and then go to the meter. So move the wires out and then go to the meter, and you would have been able to measure the voltages here and here. And the voltages would have been neither the voltage here or here. The voltages will be 2 unique voltages because a unique voltage because this is basically the cells of a battery. And inside the cells of the battery, you're going to have different voltages depending on where you are in the battery. You're basically measuring inside the battery. All right, and this is hard stuff here. Okay, I mean I bet zillions of dollars on this stuff. Okay, this is the truth. This is the way it works. All right, he could simply just point that out. Well, he sort of does. Okay, in a complex way, make this simple point that you can't probe the experiment. You got to be careful how you probe it. So he basically said the statement, the whole problem is bad probing. That's why this gimmick experiment exists. There really are not 2 voltages in the same location, and the actual voltage at that location is neither of the voltages Lewin is reading. That's how badly he's probing it. Neither voltmeter is measuring the right voltage. And he said that basically, and what the hell is that? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. And now he's just being wishy-washy about it. And instead of just asserting that, you have no right to call me an imbecile because, I make a good argument. I mean, that's just, you don't like that somebody's arguing with you? Well, man up a little bit, okay? This is just bullshit. Well, and, this whole authority of physics. So, and this really is a lot at stake because this happens all the time, right? These physicists make assertions and everybody's just too pussy to say that sounds ridiculous. So when they bring up some dark matter proposal, everybody's too pussy to say that sounds ridiculous. Holographic universe, everybody's too pussy to say that sounds ridiculous. No, there's just no balls in physics. None. Okay, just a bunch of little empty bags. No balls at all. So I'll play this fucking crap, where he just let physics down by saying there's no controversy here. No, there's a hell of a controversy. Lewin, for 25 years, was teaching students something that was just plain stupid, that there's 2 voltages in the same location, and somehow implying Faraday would think so too. When I think we could probably agree, Faraday would not think there's 2 voltages in the same fucking location. He got electrocuted enough times to know it wasn't 2 different voltages electrocuting him. I mean, this is just such crap.
Hi, good news. Dr. Lewin responded to my previous video with 3 new videos. Science time. But before...
Yeah, science time, right. Where he just frickin' insulted you, okay? There was no science time. There was just ridicule for you.
Getting to the science, let's address the drama a little. So I made...
Oh, amazing.
A video disagreeing with Dr. Lewin, a scientifically well-decorated ex-professor at MIT. The disagreement was on that Dr. Lewin said Kirchhoff voltage law, or KVL, doesn't hold when magnetic fields are involved.
So the kind of funny part is, right, that he isn't bothered by the fact that Dr. Lewin thinks there's 2 voltages in the same location, that tires can have 2 pressures in them, or however you want to metaphor it. Something that just can't be right.
First 2 video responses Dr. Lewin made were explanations as a response to the flood of my viewers commenting under his videos. Maybe he made those videos without watching my video.
Yeah, there's no doubt, okay? So why are you saying maybe? So why are you playing this pussyfoot game? He clearly didn't watch your video. Nobody could seem to direct him to your video, which seems ludicrous. And again, he was just obnoxiously pointing out how you can't possibly be right. I'm always right. I am Professor Lewin. No matter what bullshit I make up, has to be right. And that's all he did. And you're just sitting there letting him get away with it again.
The rumor has it, but it's only a rumor, a person who says he has a master's degree makes the following statement. The entire reason Dr. Lewin was reading 2 different voltages was due to bad probing.
And it's such a clear truth. It's the obvious answer to the gimmick. It's as obvious as me saying the magician has a rabbit in the table that the hat is sitting on. There's a rabbit in there. It's that obvious.
A ridiculous statement.
So he calls him ridiculous, stupid, flat earth kook. And he's sitting here saying, oh yeah, okay, yeah, we've resolved the issue. I am an idiot.
I have not been able to find that video. And it may not even exist.
I feel like he's telling me he actually watched my video, but to save me the embarrassment, I should remove my video. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe that is what he's saying. And you're saying what in reply? You know, that, who are you? I mean, what kind of arrogant lunatic are you? I made a video, drew you pictures of it, actually performed the experiment, actually moved the wire from side to side, changing the voltage. How else do I draw you a picture of this, idiot? You can't figure it out. You're making a mistake teaching that there's 2 voltages in those locations and that you're accurately reading the voltages at those locations, that you haven't broken your ruler. The ruler is fucking broken. I haven't shown you enough pictures of how broken the ruler is.
Dr. Lewin didn't find my video amusing. He assumed I don't agree with Faraday's law and I don't agree with his measurements.
He shouldn't have found it amusing. But what you should obligate him to do is actually make a frickin' counter-argument that's on the subject, rather than pointing out how you have a skeptical degree and that you must be as dumb as a flat earther. Those aren't exactly brilliant counter-arguments.
And in the comments he said that my video is dedicated to discredit his lectures and is insulting.
Well, frankly, it's not insulting, but Professor Lewin has discredited himself. Again, he's claiming something that's just plain preposterous. It's just stupid. He should be able to figure out himself, wow, this is a pretty bold claim. There's 2 frickin' voltages in the same location. That doesn't make much sense. Maybe I should find out the reason why my ruler says there is. Maybe I should figure out that maybe my ruler is broken. I mean, this is so simple. This is like a debate you would have in a 6th grade class. It's over something so fucking glaringly obvious.
and an embarrassment considering I have a master's degree.
It is equivalent to saying the earth is flat.
No, not flat earther. Call me an idiot, but not a flat earther. It is fine, people. I don't.
Oh, it's fine. So this is his attitude, right? It's fine. They don't have to answer to any questions. They don't have to explain themselves. They can just insult us and it's okay. So all criticism to the fucking authority, they can just blush it off, say fuck you, and that's it. And you're just letting them get away with it. You have enough popularity, you have enough fucking support where you can actually fight the fight, and you're pussying out. You nutless fuck.
don't have any problem with Dr. Lewin. Please don't try.
I have no problem with professors teaching absolute batshit silly crap. And you've pointed out how it's absolute crap. You showed the melted ruler. You showed how the ruler is broken. You can't measure the voltage that way. It's in the fucking oven. You stuck the plastic mirror in the oven. It melted. Okay, it can't measure anything right anymore. You showed him. And here you are pussying out like it doesn't matter. Damn. I'm sorry. This is just so fucking bullshit.
To defend me by bothering the man. Well, if you watch...
Don't bother the man. Let the man say whatever the fuck he wants. He's only a respected MIT professor. It doesn't matter if they're teaching nonsense. We all should be taught nonsense. We all should obey authorities who teach us nonsense. Oh, fuck. I mean, why don't you just defend child molestation? I mean, really, it's one of the most respected institutions in the country on the subject of physics, and here it is teaching something a sixth grader could understand can't fucking be right. A sixth grader can understand, oh, your ruler melted.
My previous video, you'll see how much I actually agree with Dr. Lewin.
No, sorry. What you'll see is you showing him exactly what he says is horseshit. He said it. He read your statement that answers the question, that points out there's a pigeon up your sleeve, and he basically says, no, there isn't. I make birds with magic powers. I mean, he's overtly saying no to the correct answer. And here you are saying, we agree about a lot of things. You don't agree about the fundamental issue that the subject is about. Pussy.
I would never try to discredit his lectures for no reason.
Yeah, you're not doing it for no reason. And you're not discrediting all his lectures. You're discrediting this one point where he goes way off the rails and starts talking absolute cracker kook nonsense. Fucking stupid premise that there's two voltages in the same location. Somehow Faraday says we have to accept this weirdness. No, he doesn't say that.
He has around 300 lectures in his channel, and
so now he's just doing a commercial for an idiot teaching people something stupid.
I suggest everyone watches them. They are great. In the process of this back and forth, a lot of people left comments, with majority of them being pretty respectful to both sides. But there are always these oddballs who leave bad comments.
Yes, I don't think people need to start talking about your this or that. So yes, I agree. But this is a real controversy. This is a real physics subject. This is as important as particle wave or entanglement or anything else like that. And there's one guy on one side, okay, and all a bunch of pussies on the other side who are afraid to say, no, that doesn't make any sense. 2 voltages, same location, can't be.
Sure, Dr. Lewin received his fair share of unnecessary bad comments from my viewers, as I did from his fans. Here,
clearly, he got comments from his own other professors at his university, and he basically insulted them for saying, nah, bullshit experiment. Bullshit. I call bullshit. There's a melted ruler somewhere.
Here's a few of them written for me. Obviously, the balding skin with a single eyebrow does not understand potential theory in non-conservative fields.
Yeah, and you're not defending yourself against that accusation. You're just wimping completely out. Just saying, who cares?
ElectroBOOM, shut up on the topic. Didn't you take an applied electromagnetics class in your EE degree? As another EE, I'm embarrassed for you. And when I left a comment under Dr. Lewin's video, somebody said, don't worry dude, pray to Allah, He will solve your problem. Go to a mosque nearby, he knows KVL better than this Walter Lewin.
Yeah, and you got the same crap, okay, from Lewin himself. So, like I said, again, you challenged the professor, and all he did was insult you. That's all he did. He didn't provide a single counter-argument to the argument that the probes are in the experiment. Thank you. He didn't provide a single counter-argument of any kind to the challenge that the probes are melted, that the probes are in the experiment, being influenced by the experiment. You can't use them. You can't probe it that way. You have to probe it some way where the probes aren't going to be part of the experiment. Simple argument, and he just totally ignored it, didn't respond to it at all. Just said, you're an idiot to think so. And you're not defending that position very well. I mean, you're clearly defending it in the sense you're making the argument, but you're not defending it with the statement that needs to be made before the argument, which is, no, Professor Lewin is wrong.
Moreover, both Kirchhoff and Faraday are in heaven, so just request Allah to ask them for a solution. And my hero, Ion Castle, said, what the hell is wrong with you, boy? I chuckled. Both of us chose to live on the internet and should deal with the consequences. Personally, I don't care about bad comments, but I do apologize to Dr. Lewin for receiving a similar wave. That wasn't my intention.
Yeah, and it's kind of obvious it wasn't your intention. So another thing somebody who's 6 years old could figure, I mean, a sixth grader could figure out. You made a polite video, you premised it with, God, you know, I'm going to do something, you know, I'm not comfortable doing, blah, 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 blah. You went through all this horse shit. And basically, you know, that in my opinion was grotesquely unnecessary. But even a hack like me knew the fucking experiment was bullshit and called bullshit. When I watched it and I saw it, I called bullshit. All right, and so it's good that somebody went to the trouble. Let's figure out why it's bullshit. Because Professor Lewin wouldn't show you. We don't get to see the actual experiment when he does the experiment. So yeah, we don't get to see the probe wires running right across the damn thing. Him not obeying his own understood rules that you can't have your probe wires crossing the magnetic field lines.
It's not a political debate and we are not looking for votes. It's about science.
Yeah, it's about science and you just pussied out. You basically said to all those assholes, you can just pretend I'm agreeing. Because you didn't say anything here.
And facts, and in science we don't need people who blindly follow somebody. We need people who put their preferences aside and look at hard facts and judge accordingly. In his third video...
So, and do you think we need professors who are a little bit more careful? Okay, who don't sit around walking around with melted rulers going, see, it's 3 inches long. You know, with all this relativity crap too, all a bunch of melted rulers all over the place in relativity. You're just letting a lot of hacks with a bunch of melted rulers tell us what reality is. And that's the horse shit here. These authorities need to be taken down a notch. You're in a position to actually do it, and you pussied out.
Although he still didn't agree with me, which is totally fine, Dr.
Yeah, it's totally fine. It's not an issue of fact or something. So, who cares? Again, he just turned it into a who cares subject. Who cares what the truth is?
Lewin did a good job of calming both sides down.
Yeah, calming both sides down by apologizing that you're an idiot. I'm sorry, you're an idiot. That's what he said in the third video. It's an I apologize video, and he said, I'm sorry, you're an idiot. That's what he said. And this idiot says he calmed everybody down by doing that. Oh, fuck. You're delusional too. If you think that third video did anything other than say, I'm sorry, you're an idiot.
Allowing for a more civilized discussion, and I appreciate it. That's the end of the drama.
What a joke. He appreciates somebody who would say something like, I'm sorry, you're a flat earth idiot. That's what he did in the video. Exactly what he did. He, again, maligned his intelligence, just basically just said, I'm sorry you're idiots. I'm sorry you don't believe in the Faraday God. I'm sorry you're heathen Muslims.
But don't leave now. Hold my hand. Let's go through this journey together. It's a long and tough journey, but coming out of it, we will learn much more.
Pile of horseshit there. So anyway, he goes through the experiment again, okay? Mostly the math this time. But, I mean, the diagram is clear, so we just showed the diagram. Clear. He's just pointing out how, yes, the probe wires are in the experiment. And again, he still hasn't figured out that, oh yeah, all we have to do is run these probe wires straight with the field lines, all right, with the radial field lines. The wire, wheel, like an old wheel with lines coming, bicycle wheel. Yeah, if you run your wire with those lines, it won't pick up any energy. Very little. So that's basically all he does here. So he just remakes the argument, and then he talks about this other professor guy who somehow is somewhere in between Lewin and him, or some other kind of horseshit, and then he brings up Feynman, which is even more disgusting. So it's as if somehow they provide a solution, which is just absolute horseshit. I mean, the solution is basically Kirchhoff's law, which is just ignore all this horseshit because it isn't going to matter. Because what goes up comes back down. It's a loop, idiot. Okay, what goes up comes back down. Zero.
S becomes 0. I just replace S with j omega and calculate my frequency. Fine.
So there he was defending Kirchhoff's law as just being a shortcut. That's why it's good. And the fact that it always works is good. So yeah, why not do it the simple way instead of the hard way? But again, this really shouldn't be just about Kirchhoff's law. This should be about how to probe an experiment where they should at least be able to figure out they should have these wires going straight with the field. And the fact that there can't be two voltages in the same place.
Example of uncontained fields. The fields close around the entire circuit and affect everything. Every piece of wire and even the resistor itself becomes an inductor and the secondary of a transformer. What?
Yes, we've already said all of this. And again, now some idiot, I guess, brought up, well, why don't you make it out of one big resistor? Well, yes, and he points out that resistors are supposed to be point charged, the small. Okay, big resistors are essentially just wires. And so you got the same problem. But the point is to measure voltages, you always have to measure in the presence of a resistor. Something to slow the pressure down. If the pressure is free to go, then you can't measure it.
One of the examples people brought to disprove my conclusions was that, what if the entire loop was made of a uniform resistive element, and we take these 2 points and the induced current I would create 2 different voltages across the same points based on Ohm's law. What you must understand is that a real resistor is only ideal if it's infinitely small. As soon as it has any dimension,
and still you'd have to probe it correctly. So again, it just doesn't matter. You still have to probe it, okay, without being influenced by the field. So this is it was sort of irrelevant. So then he did some other little thing and blah 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 blah, but it just doesn't matter. So this was some other little thing where he had a voltage and then he talked about ground. So this part's a little bit interesting, but I don't know if it's worth playing. So he's using he pointed out how if the ground wire goes further down, and this is where he should be able to figure out, oh, the ground wire is isolated from the influence of the magnetic field, so therefore it didn't get bent. It was the only wire that didn't get melted.
every piece of wire is an inductor. If we have a voltage V induced on the main loop, we would also have half a V induced on equal length of probe wires exposed to the same fields.
Yes, and they'd be going in the opposite direction based on where Lewin was measuring his experiment. They're going in the opposite direction, okay? One side's going positive, one side's going negative. So the same location is the negative end on one side and it's the positive end on the other side.
Subtract from V and we read 0 volt difference there. A more proper scientist like Romer would say that the scope voltage is the integral of EDL over the main loop on the scope side, which is 0.
So now he's giving Romer credit as a more proper scientist? Sorry.
My setup, the AC supply and the scope ground are not isolated and shorted through the scope. The simple engineer would say, oh sure, you just shorted across that voltage.
Right, so you just made a loop that's outside of the inductor's influence, or the voltage that you're using. So yes, it's not being influenced, it's not part of the experiment. So anyway, let's go to the conclusion. well, you can sort of see where he draws the lines. See, that's the ground wires going way out. That's the whole point. You need to make the loop, you need to make your probe wires get far enough away so they're not influenced. And the only way you do that is to make them go straight with the rays, perpendicular to the experiment.
Flux through the loop, half of it closes on the top side through air and half of it on the bottom through the ground loop. So like the case of toroid where all the fields were contained in the core, here the majority of the fields are contained around the probe wire and are too far to loop around the shorting ground wire and affect it. This is as if the probe wire is an inductor shorted by a piece of wire. There is still current running through it, but the voltage across it is zero. This is how we are shorting the induced voltage across the bottom probe wire and read half a voltage at the output instead of zero. You can of course write the Faraday's law around the loops and get the same results.
So he writes QED, right? Like this has something to do with quantum electrodynamics, this horseshit. You know, when we know quantum electrodynamics isn't 1917 quantum electrodynamics, it's now modern quantum dynamics, which is a bunch of woo about waves and interference and entanglements and all kinds of other horse shit. And so why did he do that? What is that about? How do I take that to mean something when absolutely no element of this experiment has anything to do with quantum electrodynamics? It doesn't have anything to do with any kind of complex functions of quantum functions, randomness, any of that horseshit. There's none of that horseshit in this fucking experiment. So anyway, just horrible, pussy garbage. Ugh. But this is why physics sucks. So here we have this pretty good little controversy. Guy gets 500,000 views on his video. Not one physicist stands up and says, oh, I get it, there can't be two voltages in the same location. Not one single other person made a video on this subject, except for a couple of people that didn't, complete crazy people. Nothing. Nobody. Nothing. Holiday couldn't even muster a statement of any kind. There can't be two voltages in the same location, or, yeah, it's really obvious, his ruler's melted. He couldn't say anything. I mean, it's just so bad. It just points out, though. It just points out this is why physics is so far off the rails. This is why the train hasn't seen a track in 100 years. It's because nobody has any nuts. Anyway, enough. Horrifically disappointing. Really? I mean, Lewin will insult you again. That's all you're going to get. Oh, I'm glad you saw it my way.